We just finished up an incredible week of student camps for both middle school and high school ministries where students started following Jesus for the first time, committed to getting baptized, made friends, and had a lot of fun as we encountered Jesus daily in our worship sessions. We couldn't be more excited and thankful for all that the Lord did.
Isn't that great? When I was growing up, there was nothing more impactful in my faith journey than being a part of a life-giving student ministry program. And so I am so grateful that we're able to provide that. Thank you for your generosity into the next generation. And we're gonna pray and believe that something happens in their hearts at a young age, whether it's children or students. We're gonna believe that whether it's through one of our camps or one of our weekly gatherings or whatever it is, that we are able to put an anchor in the heart of the next generation so they do not drift too far from God at any point in their life. Right? So again, thank you for being a part of that. Now, I personally, this won't surprise you, I've shared this before, am a huge fan of true crime genre. I don't care if it's a podcast, I don't care if it's a documentary, I don't care if it's a movie. I love the mystery and suspense that's involved. And when most of us think of crime, especially if I were to say theft, we're gonna think of a bank robbery. We're gonna think of artwork being taken. We're gonna think of a diamond heist. I don't know if you realize this, but the greatest heist, the biggest heist that ever took place in Canada didn't involve gold or jewelry or cash. It actually involved maple syrup, right? That's about as stereotypical as you can get. And there were a bunch of hockey players involved. No, I'm making that part up, right? But here's the deal. Just over a decade ago, a small group of criminals in Quebec managed to steal nearly 3,000 tons of maple syrup from, this is a mouthful, the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Products Warehouse, or Producers Warehouse, right? They were able to get in and steal. And the way they did it was the syrup was stored in unmarked white metal barrels that were inspected about once a year. And so what they would do is they'd take these barrels, they'd transport them, after they stole them, they'd transport them to another location, they'd siphon off the maple syrup, fill it with water, and return it so it maintained its weight. And eventually they kind of got lazy and they started siphoning off the maple syrup while it's still in the warehouse and not refilling them, which kind of was part of the way they got caught. But by the time the crime was finally uncovered, they had stolen over $18 million worth of syrup. It became known as the Great Canadian Maple Syrup Heist. And in some ways, it kind of sounds like a joke, but it wasn't. There was lots of lies and deceit and betrayal involved. And the reason these criminals risked everything wasn't because they had big sugar cravings, right? It was because they knew that maple syrup could be sold on the black market, just like fake passports or fake IDs or illegal drugs. You could sell it on the black market and make lots of money. I don't know if you realize this. A barrel of maple syrup is actually worth more than a barrel of oil. It's referred to as liquid gold. I know, your minds are going now. It's like, oh, really? Right? Mrs. Butterworth, right? I'm keeping her, right? But their crimes not only affected them, their crimes had impact in the community at large. Maple syrup producers were hurt by the loss of product, prices were impacted, trust was shaken. And it's just one of so many stories I could tell you of how an obsession with money caused people to make destructive decisions that impacted them and impacted other people. Now, you already know this, but I wanna be very clear today that money has incredible power. Now you think about that for a moment, right? An obsession with money can cause really good people to become dishonest and corrupt. An obsession with money can cause good people to become unkind or exploit others. An obsession with money can lead to the breakdown of a marriage. It can destroy a friendship. An obsession with money can cause us to work crazy amount of hours where now we're depleted, we're burned out, it's affecting our health. An obsession with money can create undue pressure, anxiety in our life. It can lead us to have this illusion of control and create a false sense of security. An obsession with money can cause us to attach our net worth to our self-worth. It can impact how we feel about ourselves. Money has incredible power. Now, last week, we launched a teaching series we're calling Bumper Sticker Theology. And the heart behind the series is there are certain phrases that we have about God or about spiritual truths that as followers of Jesus, we will use. And what we'll do is we'll have these short phrases that kind of summarize these truths about God or spiritual things. And we abbreviate them so much that they could actually fit onto a bumper sticker. So we say things like, well, God won't give you more than you can handle. Or everything happens for a reason, right? Or let go and let God. Or pull my finger, right? Everybody's got their own little phrases, right? But here's the deal. There are some times that those short and abbreviated statements work. They summarize truth greatly and in a great way. But other times, they're missing something significant. And what I want to do today is I want to look at something that followers of Jesus often say that's missing something. And it's something we say when we watch someone implode their life in their obsession and pursuit of money. And the phrase goes like this: money is the root of all evil. Now that sounds accurate, right? We've all seen evil that's attached to money. Human trafficking, child labor, murder, scams, dishonesty, embezzlement, blackmail, right? The list is endless. But in reality, money is not the root of all evil. There's lots of good that can be done with money. We need money. Money is essential for meeting basic needs, right? Food and water and shelter. Money gives us the ability to empower people and train people and create jobs. It allows us to enjoy things and be entertained. With money, we can build hospitals. We can build universities. We can feed children. We can provide clean drinking water to those in developing countries. In a few weeks, we have a fairly large team from Timberlake going to Mexico to build housing, to provide shelter for people. Money is needed to do those things. It has incredible power. It's not good or bad. It's really neutral. It's how it's used. And I think you know this, that churches actually would not exist without money. Money is what allows us to do the mission work we do here, near, and far. It's what allows us to provide camps for kids in middle school and high school. It's what allows us to provide children's ministries and groups and various things. So money is not the root of all evil. But where we get this phrase is from a first century letter written by the Apostle Paul to a young pastor named Timothy. Now, Timothy was a pastor in the city of Ephesus. A few weeks ago, my wife and I were in the city of Ephesus, and it was just a great experience. In the first century, Ephesus was known for its wealth and its cultural significance. It was a key location in trade and commerce. And it's not exaggeration to say, in many ways, it's like Seattle is today. And so Paul writes to Timothy, and he knows that Pastor Timothy has multiple people in his congregation, in his church, who have a lot of wealth in comparison to the rest of the known world at the time. And so in his letter, Paul says, hey, warn the people in your church to guard their hearts. And then he explains why. He says, for the love of money, not for money, he says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Money is not the root of all kinds of evil. It's the love of money. Money doesn't destroy anybody. It's the love of money that destroys people. It's the obsession, it's the pursuit of money that destroys people. We see this with lottery winners all the time, right? 70 to 80% of people who win substantial amounts of money in a lottery shipwreck their lives. Marriages are ruined, friendships are ruined. And within just a few years, 70 to 80% of people who win substantial amounts end up bankrupt. Now, personally, and I'm not saying this to sound self-righteous, personally, I do not play the lottery, right? I just feel like it's a waste of money, and I'd rather use money on other things. But a couple years ago, I get into my wife's car, and I see she has 2 Powerball tickets in her car. So I asked her about it. I said, what are the Powerball tickets? She said, I was hoping you didn't see them because I don't want to get in a fight about it. And I wasn't planning on telling you because I know you think it's a waste of money. But I figured if we won, you wouldn't be mad. I'm like, hey, you're not wrong. You are not wrong, right? And so Paul explains to Pastor Timothy, it is the love of money, it's the obsession of money that's the root of all kinds of evil. And I don't think any of us would disagree with that. We've seen the evil that's often attached to the pursuit of money. But the question I have is, how do I know if I'm trapped by the love of money? It's just very subjective, right? It's very ambiguous. If I have nice stuff, does that mean I love money? If I have a retirement plan, if I have a vacation home, does that mean I love money? What does the phrase even mean? Well, 1,000 years before Paul wrote these words, King Solomon of Israel, he addresses this very topic. Now, King Solomon had a vast amount of wealth. He had a vast amount of resources. And here's what King Solomon writes about the love of money. Here's what he says. He says, those who love money will never have enough. Those who love money are people who are never satisfied. They're never totally happy. They're never really content. Now, if that's the definition, I gotta be honest, I'm in that category. I can be content for short amounts of time, but being content for an extended amounts of time, that's very, very difficult for me. And I know I'm not alone. Many of you would be in the same boat, right? It's like, it's hard to be content for an extended length of time. Now, I don't wanna minimize the struggle with contentment. I don't wanna dismiss it or downplay it, but the fact is, often the reason it's hard to be content isn't because we're greedy people or selfish people or bad people. It's because in 2024, we live with something that very few generations have ever had to live with, especially when you go back hundreds of years ago, and that's something called awareness, right? Our world is so connected, and so we're aware of the rest of the world. Awareness is a very powerful dynamic. Every day, I am made aware by Amazon of what I do not have. Right, so this is some of your fault, right? You work there, right? Every day, I'm made aware by Home Depot. I'm made aware by billboards. I'm made aware by ads on social media. I'm made aware by various commercials of what I do not have. I'm made aware that there's an upgrade. There's something newer, shinier, bigger, faster. And so, personally, I find it very difficult to be content for any length of time. And I know you do as well. And again, it's not because we're bad people. Actually, there's a logical reason for this. Let me give you a little history lesson on how we got to this point, right? For many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, our grandparents, great-grandparents, or great-great-grandparents grew up in the United States and lived through something called the Great Depression. All right, so it was this time period of economic crisis and severe hardships, and it led to scarcity mentality, and people who made money would hold on to whatever they could out of fear of running out. There was an entire generation of people who had a shared consciousness around issues of money and being thoughtful and conservative in spending. Well, as the Great Depression started winding down, World War II was just getting started, and so many of the men in this country went off to war. And while they're off to war, many of the wives are saying, hey, we need to do something to contribute, to help. And so a lot of women ended up going into the workforce and taking jobs at factories, right? This was a very common poster. We can do it during World War II. So what was happening? Men are off to war, women are, now you've got double incomes. People are experiencing this for the very first time in their households. Then the war ends, and while Europe and other parts of the world are rebuilding their countries, men are coming back to the United States. We don't have to rebuild a country, so we're just making babies. And simultaneously, there's a shift that's happening in our culture. It was this shift of people becoming accustomed to two incomes. It was culturally acceptable for women to work, and so now everybody is fine with the two incomes. And I'm not bashing this. My wife and I both work. But think about the implications. For most people who grew up with very thrifty and money-conscious parents, they are now experiencing the most wealth and highest standard of living anyone had experienced in human history. 1950s were this time of economic prosperity in the United States, and it should have led to incredible contentment because there's so much excess. In fact, when Paul writes to Pastor Timothy, here's what he talks about in regards to contentment. He says, if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. And I would add, well, if we have enough food and clothing and an Android or an iPhone, let us be content, right? If we have enough food and clothing and an Android and iPhone and Netflix subscription and Jordans, well, let us be content. Like, I'll add to it. But after World War II, the economy's booming. The world of advertising and markets starts to shift. No longer does it primarily focus on food and shelter and clothing and basic needs. Now it's about trends and styles and keeping up with our neighbors. It's all about abundance. And after the war, with men and women who are working, they'll come home at the end of the day, they'll eat a meal and they'll watch TV with the TV dinners, and they'll be bombarded with advertisements of all the stuff they don't have. And these advertisements are fueling discontentment. And the thing about discontentment is that discontentment can make a rich person feel poor. Do you wanna know how rich people become poor? Discontentment. Discontentment can make someone who has a lot feel like they have nothing. Now, we should understand this because of the rise of advertisements on social media, right? When social media was just getting started, it was just that. It was social media. It was people being social about their lives, posting pictures about their life, posting details about their life, all that kind of stuff. And matter of fact, on sites like Facebook and Instagram, there was one ad for every 50 to 100 posts. Now it's one ad for every 3 to 5 posts. The typical person today sees more ads in 1 year than our grandparents and great-grandparents saw in their entire lifetime. We're constantly being bombarded with reminders of all the things we do not have, and it leaves us feeling bad about our lives. So we need to be reminded of the fact that if we have enough food and clothes, we should be content, right? Something else worth thinking about is that the richest people on this planet are not those who have the most, but those who need the least. I'm talking about those who've made the decision, I don't need anymore. I'm good. Now, I said this earlier, awareness is a powerful dynamic. When I'm aware of what someone else has, it makes me feel like I'm lacking. So recently I bought a home in Redmond, which I feel incredibly blessed to have bought a home on the east side, and I had some staff members over on Thursday evening. And one of our staff members, Danny, who works in our mission department, when he comes over to my house, he says, Dave, I just want you to know, if I were to design a house, it would look exactly like your neighbors across the street. I drove by and I'm like, there it is. There it is, now I want their house, right? But just like awareness can create discontent of what I do not have, it can also make me aware of what I do have. Awareness can help me see things in my own life that I didn't even realize I had. There are websites you can go to. I'm guessing you know this. You can type in your basic income information, and those websites will tell you where you stand comparatively to the rest of the people on the planet. And they take into consideration the standard of living, the value of the dollar, all that stuff. And I'm telling you, every one of us are wealthy compared to the rest of the world. Now, I am not minimizing. I know I read the prayer requests every single week. We have plenty of people in our church who are under financial stress. We do our best as a church to step in and to help people when they're going through difficult. I understand that the financial difficulties in people's lives are very real things. But I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that every single one of us, I'm talking about the people in our church, the people listening online, the people watching right online, that we are wealthier in comparison than 75% of people on this planet. Most of us are wealthier than 90% of people on this planet. We forget this, right? There are almost 3 billion people on this planet who live on less than $30 a day. Almost 1 billion of those live on less than $2.50 a day. We are wealthy. Now, I don't feel guilty about that. I don't feel ashamed of the fact that I'm wealthy, but I'm aware of it, and that's what I'm hoping you are as well, that we're just aware of it. If you have a vehicle and a place to sleep and electricity and running water, listen to me, you are wealthy. In 1950, the average home in the United States looked like this. It was just less than 1,000 square feet. Today, the average size home in the United States is just around 2,000 square feet. We have smaller families and larger homes. But apparently our homes are not big enough because we need storage units. We have 3 times the amount of storage facilities in America than there are Starbucks coffee shops. We have over 50,000 facilities, and I'm not talking about units, right? Every one of those facilities have hundreds of units. We have 1 storage unit for every 14 people in this country. And what's interesting is a lot of the storage units that we have are about the same size as a typical home around the world, made out of the same materials, right? Cinder block and tin. They don't have a toilet, don't have central heating, plumbing, electrical. Where we place our junk, there are people in this world who place their families. Again, I'm not asking us to feel guilty. I'm not asking us to feel ashamed. I don't want that to happen. I want us to be inspired. I just want us to be aware of the fact we're rich. If you have a subscription to Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu, you're way wealthier than most people on this planet. If you bought a coffee at Starbucks this week, you're wealthy. If you own a car, regardless of what kind it is, you're rich. If you have different outfits that you wear based on the season of the year, you're rich. Since over 1 billion people on this planet do not have access to clean drinking water, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, if we have access to clean drinking water, we're rich. If we use clean drinking water to wash our vehicles, we're rich. If you've ever taken something and upgraded it, and you took something that was working fine and you upgraded it and you traded it in for a new model, you're rich. If you've ever bought a ticket to a Taylor Swift concert, you are irresponsible, but you're also rich, right? Now here's the deal, guys. I've been to Haiti a couple of times. Every time I go to Haiti, I just grow in my awareness of how much I have. I am wealthy, and so are you. And the reason I say that is we have access, right? I mentioned that I just bought this home in Redmond. That means I had to move from my rental to this house. Oh, dear God. I don't know what happened over the last year of being here, I feel like it's just like glitter. It's like, where is all this stuff coming from? All right, I thought we got rid of this. I thought it's just more and more stuff. It took way longer to move than I thought. Now again, I don't even feel guilty about it. I don't feel ashamed, and I don't think you should as well. But we should feel blessed. King Solomon of Israel writes this. He says, it is the blessing of the Lord that makes a person rich. The fact we're rich is just a result of God's blessing. Think about it. God determined where we would be born, what time of history we'd be born in. He determined our level of intelligence. He determined, right, our IQ, our talents, our gifts, even for those of you who were not born in the States. It's God who determined the opportunities that would come your way. Now, admittedly, it's hard to feel grateful. It's hard to feel like I'm blessed because, man, I'm the one who had to go to college and get the degree. I'm the one who has to set my alarm and get up in the morning. I'm the one who has to work hard. I'm the one who has to push myself. I'm the one who has to do all these things. So it's easy to feel like, well, I'm entitled. I deserve what I have. We are not the only people to think this way. Matter of fact, early on in Israel's history, Moses warned the Jewish people. He says, there's gonna be a day where you become wealthy in comparison with the nations around you. And he says, you need to guard your heart. So what he does is he starts to point out all the ways that God had already blessed them and taken care of them. And then he says this, God did all of this so you would never say to yourself, I have achieved this wealth with my own strength and energy. He says, remember the Lord your God. He is the one who gives you the power to be successful. As followers of Jesus, our responsibility is to look at the blessings of our life and realize they are gifts from God. And I know it's hard to see them as gifts because gifts come in packages, they come with a bow on top. I'm telling you, I wish we just took bows and just put them on everything in our house and everything in our life that's a gift. Put it on your car, put it on your clothes, put it on your dresser, put it on your kitchen table, put it on your food. Remind yourself, it is a gift from God. God has blessed us with so many gifts, but because we're surrounded with people who maybe have more gifts than we have, we get restless, we get discontent. I don't compare myself to someone living across the world. I compare myself to someone living across the street. And what happens is because I'm in this comparison game, I'm obsessing now over money. And the Apostle Paul says, hey, be careful. Guard your hearts, for the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. What I wanna do is just take the rest of the time we have, and I just wanna talk about two ways that we can guard our hearts against the love of money. None of us want the love of money to grip us, so here we go. Number one, create a rhythm of gratitude in our life. If you're looking for something to be discontent and ungrateful for, you'll find it. There's plenty of things we could be ungrateful for. But if you're looking for something to be grateful for, you'll also find that. So I just wrote down a short list here. Family, friendships, abundance of food, access to education, technology that allows us to stay connected, running water, opportunities, church family, good-looking pastors, jobs, careers, talents, gifts, travel, health, creativity, a bed to sleep on. We could go on and on and on. 2 weeks after I bought my house in Redmond, guess what happened? I go on my yard and I see this. Dirt piles. I got moles in anybody else have moles in their yard? And I'm like, what in the world? And I start to complain about it and I start to see the negative in it. And I'm probably obsessed about this for a couple hours. And I'm telling you, I know this sounds like I'm being super spiritual. I'm just telling you the reality. I stopped and I just said, God, thank you. Thank you that I have a yard. Thank you for this blessing. But I had to train my mind. I guard my heart against the love of money when I create a rhythm of gratitude in my life. The second way I guard my heart against the love of money is by creating a plan for generosity. Now I know the stereotype, right? Pastors always talk about money. You always need to give money to the church. So if that's been your experience, I'm sorry. If you've been in a culture that's always talking about money and, oh, we desperately need money. And first of all, you don't wanna be a part of a church that needs money all the time. There's gonna be initiatives where money's needed, right? But if every week I got up here, it's like, we just need money to 2 more weeks, we can keep our doors open, and I don't know, and you don't wanna be a part of a church. You wanna be a part of a church that's moving forward. So if you've been a part of a church that's always talking about money, they're always, I'm sorry. My goal, whenever we talk about topics like this, whether it's politics or it's areas of sexuality or it's money, anything that really causes attention, my goal as the people of Timberlake are like, I love when we talk about this. I'm so proud of our church. I'm so proud of how we handle this. I'm not embarrassed. It's life-giving. That's my goal. But I wanna be very, very clear. As we talk about this, if you are not a follower of Jesus, I'm not asking you to take a pass. If you're not a follower of Jesus, I'm challenging you to be generous because you're wealthy. Just don't give to a church. Give to some sort of nonprofit. Give to something that's doing good in this world. Now, if you are a follower of Jesus and you struggle ever giving to a church because you're like, I don't trust the leadership and I think these people are shady, can I just challenge you? Find a church where you can trust the leadership. Find a church that you're not worried about them being shady. Do not allow cynicism to keep you from being generous. You know this, generous people are fun to be around. I don't want to be around someone who every time they show up to a party, they don't bring anything. I don't want to be around people who every single time you go out to eat, it's like they have dementia and they forgot their wallet. Or they've, look like they've been in a car accident and they're trying to reach, I think I got it back here. Oh, someone already paid for it. Oh, that's great, thank you. All right? Guys, we live in one of the wealthiest areas and one of the wealthiest countries in the history of the world. We have the privilege, we have the opportunity to be generous. And when we build generosity into our lives, it guards us from the love of money. And again, I'm aware there's cynicism. I'm aware that there are stereotypes of pastors talking about money. This is why I don't ever want this to be a hurdle for you, which is why in January of this year, we got rid of the offering buckets. We used to pass offering buckets, and I just felt uncomfortable saying, hey, when somebody brings a friend and it's like, dude, they're gonna feel like, I need to give something, I'm less spiritual dude, so we just got rid of that. I don't ever want this to be a hurdle in your spiritual journey. I don't want you to feel manipulated. I want you to feel inspired. I want you to feel challenged. I want you to feel like, dude, of course we're blessed. And we have this opportunity to be a blessing. So Paul tells Pastor Timothy, caution your wealthy church members to guard their hearts from the love of money. And then he goes on to give these instructions. He says, teach those who are rich in this world. That's you and me. Wealthier than 75% of this planet. Teach those not to be proud, not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable. He says their trust should be in God who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. I have met so many people over the years who've been so blessed. I mean, in comparison with the rest of the world, they're probably in the top 5% of wealthiest people. But they struggle in this area. In some ways, they have a poverty mentality, but more than that, it's they have fear. It's not that they're bad people, it's just there's fear. Fear is a big deal, right? During the Great Depression, think about this. There are a whole lot of people who had moved from the Great Plains and to the Great Plains, and they started farming. And unfortunately, these farmers ended up unintentionally plowing too much land. And then what happened is they experienced a severe drought, and now you've got 100 million acres of dried up land. So much had been plowed that now you have all this loose topsoil. And then to add to all the complexity, there were fierce winds in the Great Plains that easily picked up this loose topsoil and created dust clouds. Right? This is what's become known as the Dust Bowl. It's a big deal. Well, you can imagine you've got farmers who have taken a couple weeks of pay, maybe a whole month of pay, they planted seeds, and the wind has taken those seeds. They feel defeated. And so over time, many farmers stopped planting, which means when it finally was ready for a harvest time, they were not able to have a harvest. They hadn't planted anything. Fear is powerful. I don't know that I've ever met anyone who doesn't want to be more generous, but fear gets into our hearts. Will I have enough to retire? Will I have enough to truly have a decent savings account? Will I ever have enough to help my kids? I mean, this is the East Side. How are we gonna ever do that, right? Will I ever have enough money to truly get out of debt? Will I ever have enough money to do what I wanna do? But I'm telling you, generosity has the power to break fear. Generosity helps us not just give more, but it just kind of leads to this type of thinking where we save more and we consume less. That's just the reality. But what I've learned about life is nobody becomes generous accidentally. It has to become a habit. It has to become discipline and strategy. So what I want to do is just give you a plan that I personally have lived out for 35 years of my life. I started 12, 13, 14 years old, I was doing this. The plan is simple. I didn't come up with it. I adopted it. It just goes like this. Give, save, live. Every time that I get paid, I just choose to give some, save some, and then I learn to live on the rest. It's just straightforward. Now, I learned this from my parents, right? When my parents were in their early 20s, they became followers of Jesus, and they began to practice something known as the tithe. There was a Jewish custom of giving 10% initially, but there were other tithes, but they would give 10% right off the top to say, hey, God, we realize that this is from you and belongs to you, and we just want to honor you with it. Now, they had young kids, right? Eventually, they had 7 kids. My dad's a factory worker. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she would do a daycare right out of the house. And my mom says that part of their giving journey is she said to my dad, I don't know that we can tithe. I don't know that we can do this. And my dad's response, even though he was new to following Jesus, is he said, we're gonna trust God to provide, and if he doesn't, we can have a conversation on how to move forward. And so for all of my life that I remember, my parents have been 2 of the most generous people I know. Now, when I was pastoring Great Lakes Church in Wisconsin, they attended our church. And so my dad would occasionally call me, specifically at the end of the year. We would have Christmas offerings, and he'd say, I want to take on this project. And it was like big project, and I'd say, Dad, you're not gonna take on the whole project by yourself. And I'm gonna tell you why, Dad. My concern is when you die, I don't have an inheritance. And he'd always say, that's the goal. That was his response, right? And I love it. One time he said to me, he says, that's fine. I'm not gonna take on this project. Now, he says, if I'm gonna let you tell me what to do with the money God's trusted me with, let me tell you what to do with the money God's trusted you with. I'm like, Dad, I'll back off, right? I'll let you make this decision. But they've been so generous for more than 50 years. Not because they feel this obligation, not because they feel this pressure, it's because they realize the power of what King Solomon writes when he says, the generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Now, growing up like that, it's always been easy for me to be generous. So when I'm 12, 13 years old, mowing lawns, I'm taking every $10, I'm giving 1 to God, I'm putting 1 in savings, and I'm living on 8. That was easy to do when I was 12 years old, right? But I practiced at 16, 17, then I get married. My wife and I, we've, ever since we were married, given 10% of everything that God has trusted us with to the ministries of the local church, because the local church is the hands and the feet of Jesus in the community. It's the hands and feet of Jesus here, near, and far. So we've just done this. And the reason I tell you that isn't to pat myself on the back. I want you to know I'm smoking what I'm selling. Like, I've done this. I've made this a practice in my life. Right, we have children, we have teenagers at this church who did. My son, he's 18 years old. He works at the Y in Sammamish. And I'll tell you what, every time he gets paid, the first thing he does is he gives back to God. He's practiced this discipline. He's practiced this discipline. We guard our hearts from the love of money by creating a plan to be generous. Now, if you've never done this, you're terrified, I get it. I grew up in a home that a lot of people would say, I didn't grow up like that. I understand that. So here's my challenge to you, right here. Just go from nothing to something. I feel like I've never given anything to the church. Can I challenge you? Just start with $1. Just say, boom, I'm gonna give back to God something. So the plan, give, save, live on the rest. Now, again, if you've never made giving and generosity a part of your life, let me just show you some steps to generosity. Here they are. The first thing in the generosity journey is learning priority giving, right? This is when you get paid. You say, hey, the first thing I do is I give something back to God. You make the decision, it's between you and God. Say, hey, I give back to God. It's priority giving. Right off the top, I give to God. Right after, or after you've developed the discipline of priority giving, you can move to percentage giving. This is when I attach a percentage to my income. So now for every dollar that comes in, or for every $100 that comes in, I give a percentage. Right? And again, you choose what that is. I'll just let you know, the staff of Timberlake Church, every single person on our staff gives a minimum of 10%. We practice that Old Testament way of tithing. Why? Because we want to lead the way in this. But if you're like, oh, I can't do it, it just causes me anxiety. Start with 1%. Start with 3%. Start somewhere, but the reason a percentage attached, because then every time you get paid or every time you get a bonus, every time, you already know, it's built in. And don't get too cynical. The reason churches exist, the reason Timberlake's there is because of people who practice percentage giving. And then after you've developed that practice, there will be opportunities from time to time to do progressive giving. This is people who usually have the gift of giving. This is people who, man, they just find joy in it. Like there's an opportunity to do something extra. And they're like, I wanna do it, I wanna be a part of it. Why? Because they've experienced the joy of giving. Now, if you've been around for a while, I think you know this. We do not teach at any level. When we give back to God to be blessed, we're gonna give him 1 and he's gonna give us 10. We teach, we give because we've been blessed. Make Jesus your choice, you'll be driving a Rolls Royce. We stay away from that kind of teaching. So let's just wrap this up. I just want to invite you to do what followers of Jesus have done throughout history. To just be generous. Don't let cynicism stop you. One of my favorite studies on generosity, I reference it a couple times a year because it's just so powerful. It was done just a couple years ago by the Barna Group. It was a study focused on philanthropy, right? Giving with the intention of creating a better world. And here's what the Barna Group found. This is so fascinating. Christian philanthropy, followers of Jesus who gave, accounted for 70% of all American philanthropy in 2022. Of all money given by foundations and businesses and individuals, 70% was given away by followers of Jesus to and through the local church, to and through Jesus-focused ministries, which accounts for almost $300 billion. And that's not all. The same study revealed that followers of Jesus outgave the US government in addressing issues of global poverty. Why do I share that with you with such excitement? Just don't let yourself get so cynical. Churches just want my money. Let me tell you, the Church of Jesus Christ is the greatest thing that ever happened to this planet. The generosity, the caring about poverty, the caring about people who have less, the caring about people who are marginalized. The Church of Jesus Christ has led the way. So we learn to give. And then obviously we're not gonna spend tons of time on this. I think it's self-explanatory. After we give, what do? We save. Now ideally we'd give 10% would be ideal. Like, hey, let's we live in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Let's try to match what the ancient Jews do. But we start with a percentage, right? We give something, but then we save. So give some, save some. Ideally, I'd say 10% would be a smart way to just start practicing, and then live on the rest. So we give, we save. Part of saving, King Solomon writes this. He says, wealth from get-rich-quick schemes quickly disappears. Wealth from hard work grows over time. It takes time just to build wealth. And I pray that God does bless us with wealth. Let me be clear. I don't have poverty mentality. I pray God bless us more and more and more. You bless us so much, just keep blessing us. Keep trusting us. We want to be conduits of your blessing in this world. So we give, we save, and then of course, we live on the rest. What does that mean? It means we pay our bills. It means we go out to eat, we enjoy life. We buy a vacation home. We invite our pastor to hang out with us at our vacation home. We don't have to feel guilty about any of this, man. We get to enjoy life. We get to be entertained. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But when you look at the people around you, often they live differently. They get paid and they pay their bills and they live on what they initially get paid with. And then if they have any left over, they might save some. And then if they just have a little bit, they might give a little bit. But followers of Jesus, we do things different. We give, we save, we live on the rest. We guard our heart from the love of money. Why? Because here's what Paul writes about the love of money. He says, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. Some people have ended up putting more trust and hope in money than in God. So let's guard our heart from that. Let's create a rhythm of gratitude in our life and a plan of generosity. And I invite you to take that step, take a step towards generosity in your life today. Whatever that looks like, that's between you and God. And if you're scared, how about this? How about just practice whatever that is between you and God? Practice it from now to the end of the year. And then have the same attitude my dad did. If God doesn't provide, if somehow this doesn't work out, then maybe we'll reevaluate and try to figure it out from there. But man, let's stay free from the love of money. Jesus taught when someone has been given much, much will be required in return. And my hope is that every one of us will see we have been given much. Thank you for being a generous church. We are a church of rich people, just based on the time period of history we live, just based on where we are compared to the rest of the world. Rich people become poor when they lose sight of how blessed they are. May we not do that. Would you stand with me? I'm gonna pray, and we're gonna thank God immediately when I'm done praying. There'll be people up front who are available to pray with you and for you if that's something that you desire today. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for blessing us. Thank you for your outrageous blessings, the gifts that you have just given to us. I pray, open our eyes, help us live with the awareness of how blessed we are. Help us be people of gratitude, and help us be people who live with a giving plan to help further your work here, near, and far, so we can be the hands and feet of Jesus in this world. We love you, and we are just so grateful for your blessings. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thanks for being here. I love being your pastor, and I look forward to seeing you next week. We'll see you.
Thanks for watching. But before you go, please be sure to bookmark this page so that you can find us again next week. And are you looking for a way to get engaged and join a team? The online chat engagement team is a role that anyone and everyone can do, and it's simple. Engage with people. Create an environment where people are free to be themselves and, more importantly, open to receive the truth of Jesus. And if you're interested in joining this team and becoming part of what God is doing through Timberlake Online, please let me know on your connection card. Links can be found in chat, and I'll see you here next week at online.timberlakechurch.com.